So Ruby, I'll start with you. If you could tell us a little bit about your education journey that's brought you to your current graduate student status, and maybe introduce yourself at the beginning, that would be great.
Hello, I'm Ruby Bayliss, and so as an undergraduate, I majored in mathematics, and originally I started out as a double major, so education and math, because I wanted to be a teacher, because that's really all the career options that I really saw that a mathematician could do. And boy, was I wrong. As soon as I came into my mathematics program, it was just completely eye-opening, like what you could do as a mathematician, and that was really inspiring to me. And what was particularly interesting to me as well was biology. And actually, I did switch my major like quite a bit as an undergraduate. So at one point I was pre-med, and so I was always interested in health, like health sciences. And so basically what was really awesome was I found out as an undergraduate that like what my interests were basically at the intersection of biology and math. And so basically I just ended up looking for, internships or different opportunities that I could do over the summer to get exposures to like both of those fields. And so what ended up happening was I looked into biostatistics, and there were a whole bunch of different summer programs called SIBs that are offered all throughout the nation. And so I applied for all of them that were offered, and I got into the one hosted at Emory University in Atlanta. And so really that was more of like the test to really see if biostatistics was a good field for me. And it was absolutely phenomenal. And I enjoyed every moment of my 6 weeks there. And so ever since then, I've just been looking into, I started applying for graduate programs. And it was actually at ENAR that I met Loni, and she told me about her, about Drexel's new PhD program in biostatistics. And so I applied and I got in.
Yay. And so this is I know Drexel's on the quarter system, I think, but this is your first year, correct?
Yes.
Great.
Well,
and so far so good?
So far so good. Absolutely.
Great. Wonderful. Well, so Loni, I'll go to you and ask basically the same question about your educational and career journey that brings you to the place of being a faculty member at Drexel and Ruby's PhD advisor.
Yes. So I'm Loni Tabb, and just to kind of somewhat piggyback off of Ruby and her love of numbers, I too have a love of numbers. I just didn't realize it until a little bit later in life. And so just to give you a little bit of background, I went to an all-girls Catholic high school right outside the city of Philadelphia. I'm originally from Philadelphia. And I was actually pretty good at math then, but when I was thinking about college, I was thinking about going into business. And so, and it was pretty much like, growing up, folks always ask you, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I always thought that I wanted to be like my mom, who was in business. She was a banker for a really long time, most of her career. And so I thought that's what I wanted to do. And so when I went into my undergraduate, training, it was actually here at Drexel University. I started off in the business school, and I went on my first co-op. And with co-op, you're working for 6 months at a time, and it's in the field that you're majoring in. So I actually started working at the Vanguard Group, which is a mutual fund investment company. And so while I was in my training there, the trainer who was teaching me about mutual funds and different types of investments, he noticed that I had a strong interest and a strong skill in math and quantitative skills. And so he asked me, he said, did you ever think about majoring in math? And I said, well, no, because I didn't really know what to do with math, let alone, dive into saying, hey, I wanted to major in it. And so needless to say, when I came home and I told my mom and my dad that I wanted to switch my major to math, they both looked at me like I was crazy. They were like, what are you going to do with that? And so, I'm first generation. And so my folks, they're from the islands. Like I said, my mom was a banker. My dad does like home remodeling. So math is like the furthest thing from anyone in my family. But I made the switch and I continued on in the math program at Drexel. And I went into the master's program at Drexel as well. It was a 2-year master's program in math. And that's when I found out about biostatistics. And so halfway through my program, when I was thinking about what to do next, biostatistics I was convinced that this is really what I wanted to do, because I love math, but I didn't love the pure side of math. I love the applied side of math. And so I liked the blending of health and math, or biology and math. And so when I was thinking about different schools, I applied to different PhD biostat programs around the country. I really wanted to stay in Philly, though. That was my goal, because I was from Philly. I was comfortable in Philly, and I just wanted to stay in Philly. And I had a mentor at the time and this was during the era of handwriting letters of recommendations. Okay. So I had approached her, my mentor. She was a faculty member in the math department, and she wrote my letters of recommendations for different PhD programs, but then she told me I forgot one. And I said, no, I didn't forget one. I was thumbing through the recommendations, and she said, you forgot Harvard. And I said, no, I didn't forget Harvard. That just wasn't on my list. And she said, well, why? And she said, they have a really strong biostat program. That's what you want to do. You should really consider it. And I said, well, I didn't really think Harvard is a place for someone like me. And so she just looked at me square in the face and said, you need to make it a place for someone like you. And so I applied and I got in, and I never looked back. And it was the best setup. It completely changed my thought of the stereotypes I had in my mind about a place like Harvard, and about even within the School of Public Health, because as a math student, you're not housed typically in anything public health. You're housed within, arts and sciences. And so it's a very different type of culture. And so that's how I ended up, finishing up my training in biostatistics. And immediately after I defended, literally the next week I was working at Drexel. And so that's how I ended up in now this faculty position. And I love it.
So ultimately back in Philly, which is good, right?
Ultimately back in Philly.
That's good.
So I'll ask both of you if there was a class or classes as undergrad in your undergraduate career that you didn't take that now you wished you had. And I'll start with you, Loni.
Yeah, so I wish that I had taken more professional speaking classes or more communications-based courses, because as a mathematician, statistician, biostatistician, oftentimes we're knee-deep in the weeds of quantitative analyses or methods building. And so, but in order for us to translate things, you need to be able to have a strong foundation in communications. And so I wish I had taken more of those types of courses, because I've had to pick that up along the way. And I also wish, say, along the lines of communications is more writing courses, because I find that coming into my faculty position, that was an Achilles for me. Like that was always a struggle. And so I think writing, professional speaking, any type of communications type of course, I wish I would have taken more of those.
Ruby, what about you?
So I can piggyback off Loni and also agree that I wish I would have taken more writing courses as well. And basically, like, I definitely struggle with being a very concise writer. I like to justify my justifications. And sometimes that's not always necessary. And especially, like, often when you, like what Loni already mentioned, that when you think about math, like the numbers explain it for you. But then when you come into more of like an applied math, not only, well, the numbers do explain things for you, but you also have to explain to other people why the numbers explain things. And so that's, I don't know, that's completely another way of thinking of how am I going to describe what I'm modeling to the everyday person, or how am I going to describe the results that I get to the everyday person, and how is, like, why does it matter to them?
So I'll segue to the next question for you, Ruby, and say, so how would you describe the coolest part about your research to folks who are outside of biostatistics and public health?
Specifically in my research, one thing that I learned was about geographically weighted logistic regression. And I think that just in general, being able to model like how certain variables are related to a particular outcome is really fascinating to me. And so normally in regular regression, you're just looking at, like the relationships between variables and your outcome. But then with geographically weighted regression, now you're adding another dimension to it. Like you're adding like a particular location. Like how do these variables in a particular location relate to this outcome in the same location? And I think that's really interesting because there's so much variability there's just so much spatial variability depending on whether you're looking at county level stuff, county level data, state level data. And so that's really fascinating to me, just how you're able to model these relationships mathematically.
And in your current work, are you looking at a particular topic or a particular county or state issue?
Yes. So in context to my research, my outcome is the presence of a water violation in a county and how different neighborhood level characteristics relate to that outcome. So basically, one of the focuses of my research is, is there a relationship between like socioeconomic status and the presence of a water violation? And so I'm looking at a bunch of different socioeconomic status variables along with the demographic makeup of the counties that I'm looking at.
And just so I understand, would a water violation, that would be some kind of contaminant, something found in the water that is not good
Correct.
for humans? Yeah.
Correct. So it's a health-based water violation, and that's
okay.
And those standards were created by the Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974. And so basically anything that violates any of those standards counts as a water violation, whether that's contaminants getting in the water, how the water is being treated, because we have to treat the water with chemicals, and so are those at safe levels. And of course there's other factors that are involved, but those are the main ones.
Wow, that's great. And Loni, I know you are supporting this research and guiding this research, but maybe so you might want to add your take on this, but also I know that you have lots of other interesting projects that you've been involved in. So what's the coolest? So I guess that's like asking you to pick your favorite child, but I'll put you on the spot.
Well, I will say, I think the coolest thing about the research that I do in general is the autonomy to research the public health challenges that really mean something to me. And so just like Ruby mentioned, her work in looking at water violations, when Ruby came into the PhD program, I spoke with her about her interest and what motivates her in the field of biostatistics to research the types of problems that really get her going. And one of our early discussions that came up dealt with the Flint water crisis. And so that's why she is now on this path of looking at county demographics and whether or not that can predict if you see water violations in a given county. And so for me, the work that I do, it spans from focusing on, say, health disparities in, it could be a lot of different health outcomes, but in particular, cardiovascular health in this country, to all the way to social disparities in cities and whether or not alcohol access promotes more violence. And so there's a wide variety of the types of projects that I work on, but at the end of the day, I think the coolest part is that I'm incorporating space and I'm incorporating time. So basically where you live, where you work, where you play, where you learn, where you worship, your environment has a lot to do with different health outcomes that you might experience. And so I think with space and with health and with time to be able to see, over time what's going on with different health outcomes, and I think that matters a lot. And so I know going into my training, I knew that I wanted to look at health-based things. I just didn't know what that actually looked like. And so in my training, I focused a lot on mapping and measuring different disparities. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing is still grounded in that. And Ruby, I think it was such a nice match in terms of when she came into the PhD program, that her interest in at least what happened in Flint, Michigan, it's grounded in place-based circumstances. And so I think it's an important lens to look at different public health challenges. So I think that's the coolest part.
Could either of you say just a little bit about the tools that you use for your research?
Yeah. So for a lot of the place-based work that I do, so that speaks to the mapping and the measuring of things, I use R. R is a really useful and freely available platform, statistical software package that you can do a ton of from the most simple type of statistical analyses to even the more complex. And so, and I have other statistical software packages that I know of and that I use, like SAS, but R is like no other. And so, and I'm not, they don't pay me to say this. I'm not employed by R, but yeah, that's my primary tool that I take advantage of.
Sounds like I could surmise that there might be a bit of advice there. Learn R.
Yes.
Yes.
And for anybody listening, they have really good stickers too.
They do.
They absolutely do. Absolutely. And if you develop a package and you get to name it, then sometimes you get to design the sticker.
That's right.
That's right. Yes.
And the community is seems very active and generally very
active.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I think I've come to the conclusion that we all like stickers. So let me broaden that a little bit and ask both Ruby and Loni, what do they like to do when they're not working or teaching or doing biostatistics? And Ruby, I'll start with you.
Okay, no problem. So when it's warm out, I love to go hiking, and I just love just being in the outdoors and I guess being away from the city and just enjoying, like more like a rural setting. And actually as a kid, I was fortunate enough to spend my summers at a lake cabin. So I love being at the lake. And I also love going to beaches. And originally I'm from Minnesota. So obviously we're pretty landlocked, but we have lots of lakes. And so that's nice. But I definitely, whenever I've experienced the ocean, I've loved it. And so that's one of the that's definitely one of the things that I was excited to moving to Philly for. Well, obviously besides the PhD program, was being like within, I don't know, like a 2-hour drive to the beach. So I'm really looking forward to spending some time outdoors. And then also, like when it's colder, I actually really enjoy going to movies. Movies are great. And I think one of the things that I really like about movies is it really changes your perspectives. Like it just really changes your perspectives on different situations that people are put in. And I don't know, it just is very eye-opening and a lot of like thought. And I don't know, I think even poorly designed movies can, I don't know, evoke like different emotions like to different audiences. And I think movies are just so relatable, and they're just, I don't know, they're just special.
You want to give us a recommendation? Anything that you've seen recently?
So unfortunately, I haven't gone to see a movie in a while, but
that's a good graduate student response.
Oh no, movies are how my sister got through grad school, I think.
Right.
No, I usually try to go like, I don't know, at least once a month. But I'm trying to think, what was the last movie I saw? Well, I don't know. I guess like the last great movie that I saw was actually Hidden Figures. I love that movie.
Yeah.
I know it's not in theaters anymore, but
yeah,
it's just such an inspirational movie.
Yeah.
And it was just so well done. Yeah.
That's a great recommendation.
Yeah.
All right, Loni, when you're not at work or teaching, what is it that you like to do?
I like to spend a lot of time with my family. I have 2 little ones, a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. So they keep me very busy. And especially during the summer months, we like to go to the beach and we like to hang out outdoors. I am a city girl at heart, but I like to be outdoors. But it's within certain boundaries. So I love to also go out and eat. I'm a foodie. And so I like to try a lot of different types of cuisine. So I grew up in a Caribbean household. And so I have a lot of bias towards spicy food and, Indian food, West Indian food. And so I try to find foods from other cultures that kind of mimic that. And then I am heavily involved in my church. And so I run this ministry at my church called MOPS. It's Moms of Preschoolers. And so it's for moms that have little ones that they either are members at our church or they're in the community. And we meet up once a month and we do different activities. Sometimes we do volunteer activities, but other times we just simply color. That's what we did last month. So those are some of the things that I like to do when I'm not, trying to address some of these different public health challenges that we face in the world.
I have gotten together with my friends and just colored too.
Yes, it's very therapeutic.
It's
very therapeutic.
So if a person is visiting Philadelphia, what's the have-to restaurant recommendation from the food? Is that too difficult to choose?
No. I mean, I'm biased, right? So I will say this: if you come to Philadelphia and you are looking for some traditional Philly food, you have to get a cheesesteak, and you could get a chicken cheesesteak, a veggie steak, or a regular cheesesteak. And I think the best place to go to get that is, which one? I think D'Alessandro's. That's the best place to go and get steaks in the city. I think, traditionally speaking, people go, when they come into the city, they go to South Street and they go to Gino's or Pat's. Those are very popular touristy steaks, but I don't think that they're like traditional steaks. I think that they're touristy steaks. So if you want the real deal, you have to go to D'Alessandro's.
I
Oh, that's
actually
great.
just wrote that down because I know we're going to Philly in a few years for a conference.
Yes, yes.
I'm
Yeah.
always like, is there food I can pick up and carry? And
Yes,
but-
you definitely want to carry.
Yep, that's wonderful. Okay, so this one is our last question for both of you is what question didn't we ask that you would like to answer? So is there something, some area of your research or work or play life that you would like to share with us that we didn't ask in a question? And
Yeah.
Ruby, start with you.
So I actually had a hard time thinking about this question because I feel like the questions that you already asked were very like they were already like they were pretty broad enough to where like I could express stuff that I felt like I could express without you really like directly asking. So I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to pass on this question.
Totally fair. Loni, how about you?
Yeah, so I too struggled with this a bit, but the question that I actually came up with, and you guys have the answer, is how do we best ensure we increase diversity in the biostatistics, statistics field? And I think the reason why I say you guys have the answer is actually through initiatives like this. I think that ensuring, promoting a field, right? It's almost like our duty to show, or at least try to show the representation in that field. So ensuring that women and minorities know that this field actually exists and that it's open to them through initiatives like this. And seeing women and minorities talk about this field creates a certain picture that the field is actually for everyone and not just a select few. And so I was really happy to hear about this initiative and about the push to kind of get folks out there so that people know that the field is growing and it has been growing. We still have a ways to go, but I think things like this allow folks coming up to know that they belong here. So you guys had the answer. You didn't ask the question, but you have the answer.
Oh, well, only with your help, that's for sure. And
And I
I guess that
completely agree.
reminds, oh, sorry, Laura.
Oh, I just said I completely agree. I think that's extraordinarily important.
Maybe we should wrap up by coming back to Ruby, what you described as one of your first experiences, and that is just to tell folks how they might get involved in a SIBS program, because that acronym might not be familiar, and I'm not even sure I know what all the letters stand for.
Sure.
I know what the experience is, but
I don't, but I'm a layperson, so I'm used to that.
Yeah, sure. I can expand on that. So SIBS stands for Summer Institute in Biostatistics.
makes sense.
Yeah. And essentially, this program was designed for undergraduates and also recent graduates to expose them to biostatistics. And so there's different programs at different sites, and each of the different sites have different focuses, I would say. What was really great about Emory University was that it was literally right next to the CDC. And so we got to go on field trips to the CDC. And so that was really cool to see what kind of like careers you could do at the CDC. And there was lots of different activities. So there was field trips, there was panel discussions, there were we actually learned like R and SAS, and then we also had different lectures, and then we also had different professors lecture to us about their research, and the faculty were so great at Emory, and they were completely open, and they wanted students to really like come and like scheduled time with them to talk about maybe some individual questions with them about where to go next. And so I thought that was really, it was such an amazing experience. And so we did all that in like a 6-week time frame. And so, it was just unbelievable. And
Yeah.
I actually remember talking to, one of the organizers for the SIBS program at Emory, and they were telling me about how they were considering not accepting recent grads. And like I told them that, you know, I think it's important that recent grads are included because I was a recent grad when I went to SIBS. And honestly, like if I hadn't gone, I don't know. Honestly, I can honestly say if I hadn't gone to SIBS, I definitely would not have met Loni at ENAR. And because I wouldn't have even known about ENAR at all.
Right.
And it was actually Renee Moore who connected me with Loni, and Renee Moore was sort of the head organizer of the SIBS program. And so you can, basically it's a great networking opportunity as well.
Yeah.
And it was just such an invaluable experience. And every time that they send me emails asking me to talk about my experience, I'm more than happy to talk about it and just talk about how great that program was.
Yeah.
And the thing was for me as well was I went to a very small liberal arts undergraduate college, St. Catherine University in St. Paul, Minnesota. And basically, like, it was great because the classroom sizes were small. You had you had close relationships with your professors. Unfortunately, though, they didn't necessarily supply as many like opportunities necessarily. And so when I found out about SIBS, I completely went out on my own to find that opportunity. Like it wasn't something, I don't know. It seems that like SIBS is definitely becoming more well known, but it's still not. It's still, I don't know. It's like to a lot of people, they don't even know it exists, and so it's just a great opportunity, and it would be great to, I don't know, even get more sites open, so more people can attend. Because I think when I went, there was only 6 different sites available. Yeah, there weren't very many. So I'm hoping that the program can grow because it's just such a phenomenal program.
And I just want to piggyback off of what Ruby had mentioned already about SIBS, in that it's also, because it's not a program that is at every single university across the country, it is competitive, but the cost associated with even participating is covered for these students as well. And so not only are they building these relationships and getting a strong foundation, a good chunk of these students move on into PhD programs for biostatistics, and sitting on admissions committees myself for PhD biostat programs and also master's programs. Students that go through a SIBS program, they have a certain perspective that other students don't have. And so then their actual application becomes more competitive when they're going into these graduate courses. So I echo what Ruby was saying in terms of, I wish, there were more of these programs that are funded, and they're funded from NIH. And so hopefully it can continue to grow so that it can increase awareness for the field.
Thank you for talking about that. I know from my own perspective, when I went to college, I did theater, but there's so much you don't know is out there that afterwards you're like, oh, I could have taken advantage of that. I could know more about what I'm going to do. And with stats, that's so important because it's such stats and math, it's such an abstract field to everybody who's looking at both of those from outside. So yeah, I'm really glad to hear that they haven't decided not to take recent grads. That's good.
That's awesome.
The earlier the better.
Yeah.
I work with our student chapters, and I think the more people can know, the earlier the better they can start looking for opportunities, the better it is.
Well, I think that's just one. It's a perfect way to conclude a mathematics and statistics awareness month conversation to let people be aware of an opportunity. And I'll just add that you're reminding me that, Loni, we may have had the answer, but we can make our answer better by
Yes.
completely describing these opportunities on the education website of the ASA. So note to self that we should add that to the student
Yes.
section. And of course, research REUs funded by NSF, a bit different experience, but also speaks to your networking and getting involved. So thank you very much.